Good, good. Hello. How are you? Do you want video?
If you want.
All
We
right.
can cam up if you
I
want.
Yep. What's up?
Alright, let me set it up so that they can see you too.
Let me get my stuff in order.
Okay.
I can pop out the video that I'm receiving and make it a separate tab. Useful. Can you still hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right, good. For some reason, the popped out Discord thing isn't loading your face.
Weird.
So annoying.
I can't handle my energy.
I guess so. I'll just have to keep it there.
Not even that I'm quite energetic at the moment. I'm actually kind of tired.
Yeah, I'm gonna do the infrared. I'm tired also. That's a good strat.
He literally has insomnia though. Like, when Perspective Philosophy debated him first, he only got like 2 hours of sleep because he had to do it in the morning because he had to. Perspective Philosophy said he had a 9 o'clock bedtime.
Well, didn't he go back on it later and then like um I don't know, it was something where he wanted to debate again in the afternoon or something
Yeah.
when he's ready. Um um I can't remember. There was some clip that went around. It was a contradiction, but I don't follow the infrared lore,
He is
so
the most misrepresented guy on the internet.
I guess he's just too alpha.
He's too Sigma for these soy boys.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, it's also super weird talking with these noise canceling headphones on. It's hard. I feel like I'm deaf. I got new headphones.
They look good.
Thanks. They are good. They're like studio quality. They do everything super well. And I only got them for $20, so.
Wow.
Yeah, they're really good. But anyway, where do you kind of want to start?
Well, all I have to go off of is you want to debate about neopronouns, and you said they're not based. That's it. So, like,
They're not
what
based.
is your. What do you mean by that? To quote the meme.
What do you mean by that? Well, for me, pronouns are kind of supposed to point to like a cultural understanding that we have of something, and neopronouns completely fail to do that, in my opinion. As far as like what they should be doing, it seems like neopronouns just don't.
Wasn't that the point, though? Because they're new. That's the neo part. Like, in order for it to begin to mean something, you have to actually start using it.
Right. Well, then I would just ask you to demonstrate that they're useful or needed in some way. But can you tell me first, like, what specifically, like, why have them? What do they do? How many can you make? What is a neopronoun? Just stuff like that. Give me your general take.
Well, it's because my understanding of it is that they're used to refer to people who are non-binary or otherwise like gender non-conforming to the extent that no normal pronoun like he, she, or even they would refer to them in a way that would make them comfortable. So like they have a dysphoric reaction to those pronouns being used for them. So they take on a new term that they then request people use to refer to them as. So that the use is literally the same use as calling me like she, her. Like it's the same thing basically.
Okay, so you'd say um, neopronouns exist to validate non-binary people?
Yeah, or even like people who the typical pronouns that we use don't apply to.
Okay, so how does that differentiate from they them?
I guess they wouldn't want to be referred to as they, them either. But some
Okay.
people even consider that to be a neopronoun. And they think that that is too far. Like,
Well, I guess. Um, so okay. Can how many can you have? You didn't really quite answer that. Can they just be whatever?
I mean, in the abstract, the potential is kind of unlimited. Because that applies to all language.
Mm, let me.
When it
I'm
comes
just
to like
form.
inventing new words, like you could kind of do whatever you want almost. As long as it like
So I
takes
think
some
that's
kind of
gonna
a
be
load.
our yeah. So like, what happens if an individual um creates a new pronoun that nobody else has? Does that word mean anything?
Well, it definitely means something to the individual, but if they wanted to
But what would anyone
expand
else
its
be able to
meaning,
understand it?
well,
Would
I
anyone
assume
else?
that they would have to explain themselves.
So how can you explain gender, a gender that doesn't fall outside of the male female paradigm? How can you go about explaining that? Or sorry, man woman paradigm.
I feel like someone who identifies that way would be better at answering that question than me.
That's probably true, but I guess my point with that would be like as a culture, as a society, we have an understanding of gender that maps on to some sort of man woman thing, sliding scale. If we say neopronoun, then we start to kind of change the meaning of what gender is. And then if you can just have infinite of them, you make the concept of gender like not exist anymore. That's kind of my thing.
I don't know if that's
Like,
true because most people still identify as men and women. So it's like a certain small minority of people identifying otherwise doesn't break the whole system down instantaneously. Like you still have men and women in society.
so, but why would we create infinite new words to define every type of different experience you can have and call them pronouns when the point of pronouns is to simplify language?
Isn't the point of pronouns more to refer to things and people than it is to simplify things?
Well, then why
That's
not just
really
call
its
them by
use in a sentence.
Well, then why not just call them by their name?
Because in a lot of like, because why wouldn't you call anybody by their name by that logic? Like, what
Wh-
is a pronoun for then?
It's to simplify language. That's what I'm asking you. I say it's to simplify language, but you are saying, well, it just refers to a person. I'm asking you to tell me what differentiates a pronoun from a name.
Because you don't want to say someone's name every time you refer to them,
Why
especially
not?
if you don't know their name. Like, let's say you're
Why not?
working, like for example, you're working as a cashier at a restaurant. And you don't know
Okay.
everyone's name there. So if
Okay.
you're like serving the food, you can say like it's theirs because you don't know
hmm
their name. And that the pronouns function in that sentence is to refer to the person.
But can we go back to the first thing where you said that you don't want to say their name every time? Why don't you want to say their name every time?
Well, like the example I just gave, oftentimes you don't know people's names.
But that's
Secondly,
a
it's actually like very awkward and not the normal way that human beings talk. to just say people's name every time you refer to them. Like, it's just not
Well,
the way that we talk in the English language. So you want to
the
change that, or like, I don't? Am I
no.
strongmanning you?
So the answer I'm kind of looking for, I'm. It seems like we don't want to say somebody's name every single time because because pronouns are shorter. We simplify language. It's just that's what they're for. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I don't think that a pronoun is just a simplified version of somebody's name, though.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it's to make language simpler.
What would the more complicated alternative be, though? Like,
What
what
do you
is
mean by
this?
that?
What is it a simplification of? Like a statement with a pronoun? What is the more complicated statement that it is boiling down into a simpler version?
Their name.
But somebody's name isn't that much more complicated than a pronoun. It's still just one word.
Um, it's just it's redundant. It's silly.
What is?
Saying someone's name over and over again.
Yeah, that's what I argued.
I feel like we're kind of losing the plot. I I'm so confused.
Okay, what are you confused about?
I'm confused on how neopronouns are different from a name to you.
Because
Or I guess we
if we're talking about the actual people who use them, they do have names that are different from their pronouns. It's literally a different word.
okay, but we have nicknames.
Okay, that's a third category of words.
But they all exist seemingly to talk about one specific person.
Yeah, just like for people who use regular like run of the mill pronouns too. It's the same.
No, because when we use
You can
regular
still
run of
have
the
a
mill,
nickname, a name, and a pronoun. It's the same.
well, no, but when we have gendered pronouns, we can look at someone and just use them. Similarly to the way we can use they them when we don't know somebody's pronouns. You can't know
Yeah,
that someone uses they, zer, or fey fair
unless you know.
without asking them.
But the same is also oftentimes true of trans people who just use he, him, or she, her. Like at first glance, you might
Um,
think that they are not the gender that they are.
yeah, I mean that is like that's there's something to that, and there's something to the way gender expression maps onto language. But the issue I'm seeing is that neopronouns seem to not map on to any type of understanding that we have in language or in expression. Like, what does a Zazer person look like?
Well, ooh, this actually kind of goes into a more complicated thing about gender as a whole, because you're
Yeah,
seeming to imply that there is actually some kind of ideal form of what a woman or a man looks like.
it doesn't have to be an ideal form, but it just has to be a cultural understanding.
Yeah, but
And that's all that language really is, right? It's connecting like our experiences and creating a common cultural understanding of what the things around us are called, right?
I wouldn't say that's all it is. Like, language is not just for the use of culture. They
Well,
intertwine with each other, but like it's actually kind of reductive to say that language is just for the use of like maintaining society.
no, I'm not saying it's maintaining society at all. I'm just saying it's connecting our experiences and making them parsable, able to understand.
Well,
Which
for the
is
actually existing people who use these words to refer to themselves and their friends, like that is a whole like micro version of a cultural understanding that they're inventing new terminology to describe.
Um, see, but then I guess the question then would be like, why should I, why should I entertain that?
Well, do you want to misgender them or like
Well,
make
I
them
mean,
feel bad? Like
but
that's
but
why.
but their understanding of their identity and themselves don't map on to any kind of understanding that we have of gender
Well, who's we? You mean like mass on the mass scale of like
as a language, the people who speak the language.
does that mean that neopronouns constitute a whole new language?
No, I'm saying the people that speak the English language. Neopronouns are trying to exist within the English language.
Well, I would say that they're succeeding. Like they do exist within the English language.
But do they but do they map on to an understanding that we have and do people know to use them? Like it doesn't seem like it. It doesn't seem like gender exists in a place where neopronouns do.
Well, I assume that the more you explain it and the more people know about it, it develops a certain understanding. So like I don't think that gender is essentially limited to the categories of man and woman.
I kind of think it I kind of think it is.
Why is that? This gets to like the root, I think. Like if I'm not mistaken, like we're
Yeah,
actually coming down to it.
I think I think what gender means is like a super important part of the conversation. And it's also the most complicated part. Um, I think gender, here, wait, let me move to a different place on my notes. What is gender? So that's kind of the big question. I would say that, um, I would simply just say that gender is a sliding scale from man to woman. And because we culturally understand it that way.
I'm more interested in developing a concept of gender that includes every potential that it could possibly hold, which means not conceiving of it as a binary scale, but as more of like not like a blue to pink spectrum, but like a color
Mm.
wheel. Like we actually do have the capabilities of developing understandings of ourselves outside of the binary. And that's really what non-binary means to me. Like it doesn't just mean like you oscillate between the poles. It means like you're outside of the poles.
Well, to me, I think the way that we understand non-binary, I think it means you exist somewhere within, like in between the poles. Your your color wheel analogy is interesting, because it's actually something I was going to talk about. To me, I was going to say that gender, the male to female, the male to female conception that we have. Sorry, I keep saying male to female. Man to woman conception of gender that we have is like the color wheel, and then new genders like that exist outside of that would be like trying to get someone to imagine a new color. Like I think that's like comparable to how we conceive of gender.
But if
Do you
you
kind of
take
know
the
what I mean?
yes, but I think that if you take the experience of the actual people who embody this non-binary identity, they are experiencing something that falls outside of the binary.
Um, well, I just can't conceive of that. That's just like meaningless to me. That's just kind of absurd. Like philosophically.
So where are you getting like what is the thesis? Like what is this founded upon? Like what leads you to the conclusion that this is what gender is?
Um, You know, I probably should have thought about an answer for that. I guess I guess the simple answer and kind of what it the most honest answer is that that's just kind of like what I see. Like it just seems that as a culture, we just that's just how we identify gender. We that's just how we talk about it. That's how it's always been to me. Which I guess is like a you could say it's a reactionary position, but it just seems that way.
Well, you are taking the state of culture as it is and sort of like reifying it, like maintaining it in your conception. Like like the reality has mirrored itself in your mind as an objective truth. But I would say that if you look historically at the actual like construction of gender through societies, there have been in different societies like Native American cultures like third categories and all like there it literally biologically the science is proven that like there are different biological according to all the measures of science as it has developed people that are just not like that cleanly cut into either of the binary genders or sexes rather. So like don't you think that it's actually there's actually some kind of radical potential within the objective reality of gender and sexuality where you could actually conceive of these things in a more creative way than simply like a two option one or zero kind of
Well, I'm not saying
decision
one or
making.
zero. I'm saying 1 to 10 and everything in between. But
Well, is that what
or
you're
I
saying though? Because you are saying like there are two genders and then there are in betweeners.
well, I guess if you want to say non-binary is well, yeah, I guess that is what I would say. But the sliding scale, everything in between there could be conceived of as genders in and of themselves. I just don't think things outside of that make sense.
So what justifies that? Like, let's say you have somebody who their
Well,
physical
what
appearance.
justifies that? What justifies that is that that's just how culture is. Like gender and culture are kind of cyclical. Like our cultural understandings of things justify themselves.
Well, if you
Did they not?
if you
Like,
think of them in the way that they develop and then freeze it in time, but like it's always in motion. Like it came from something. Like it didn't just come out of the sky. Like it's not some kind of like objective higher truth that some like philosopher king carried down to the masses and demanded like this is the truth. Like these are the genders. It was a development that
well, no, but
occurs and it
you could say that
continues to
about
occur.
literally, you could say that about any any idea or concept. Like,
Of course you can.
well, yeah, like I am sitting in a chair. Like you can, well, you're saying, well, it doesn't have to be a chair. Da, da, da. It can be this, this, and this. That doesn't make any sense.
Why not? If a certain group of people call it something other than a chair, and then it takes on a whole new meaning, then how's that? How can you just look at
They're
it and then say,
wrong.
"Oh, it's a chair," actually? Like, and then all those people would look at you like you're the crazy guy.
Well, no, but they are wrong. Language is actually about like what more people think like words mean. Is it not?
Wait, say that again.
In order to have a conception of something, like societally, it is just about like who or how many people understand it. And then we pass it down and use it to point to different concepts.
There is a lot of philosophy that is kind of founded upon this idea that popularity actually does not equal truth. Like just because there's a majority that conceives of something in a certain way doesn't make that like real.
Can you give me an example other than gender?
Well, like religion.
Okay. What about
Like
it?
you have a whole church of millions of people, and they each, like, would one actually be able to say that what the church as a group says is the truth, and what the sort of like signs that they all take meaning out of, like the god and the myths and all of that, and all of the lore behind it, and all of the cultural meaning that it takes on? Would you say that that is truer than the individual subjective relationship that each of the actually existing people in the religion has individually to God and to those cultural symbols and to that meaning? Would you say that what the group says is more true, or what the individual experiences is more true?
In that sense, I would say it's disanalogous because language is a common thing that we're supposed to be communicating, whereas with religion, it's trying to point to something that is factually true. It's trying to find a fact that we can agree or disagree on. So I don't think that's really
But religions
analogous.
use language. Like, language is embedded in all of this. It's an institution just like gender is. There's masses of people who think things about it and interact with symbology and have individual relationships and experiences to that societal reality. I was like,
Well, but what does that have to do with your argument, though?
what I'm saying is that people's real experience with things holds more truth value to me than what the mouth of the crowd is saying.
Holds more truth value to you than what the mouth of the crowd is saying. But language is supposed to be something that we use to communicate to each other. How can
Yeah,
we
of course that's
communicate to
still
each other?
going on, but you can't communicate everything that you experience unless you,
Yeah,
for example,
which is
create new
why
terms for them.
no, which is why we should use more vague and common things when we talk about things like pronouns because we can't it's not reasonable to expect language to be able to carry all of these different experiences
Why?
because that's just too much to understand. Like what if you wanted to learn English as a non-native speaker? Like that's just ridiculous to
It
expect.
is a pretty hard language as it stands, either way.
Yeah, so why make it harder?
Well,
Like we
because you
have
want to respect people's experiences in reality. Like, you want to have a society where everyone is like, everyone has a place in that society. Am I wrong? Like, you don't want to make people feel
well,
excluded.
you can yeah, you can do that, but you can do that by expanding the categories instead of making a million billion little categories in between
The
to describe
categories are
every
already
specific experience.
expanding, and none of us can really control that. Like, every
Yep.
category is
Yeah,
expanding.
we should expand the categories and not chop them up into little tiny xenogenders that try to describe every different experience that you can have as a person. It's not practical.
I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal. It's a very small minority
Uh,
of people, and if you just learn their words and use them, I don't see the problem. Like, it's a similar function to not misgendering a binary trans person to me. Like, it's the same thing.
well, no, it's not the same thing because you're not creating a new word. You are just adding to the concept of he or she, which is like simplifying things.
Well, I don't know if it's really that much of a simplification. I think a lot of people would actually say that I'm making it more complicated, even in the
I guess I
binary.
just say that I just say that those people are wrong because when you expand a category and you put more and more things inside of it, then it seems like you're making it simpler. Doesn't like isn't that just true? Doesn't that just make intuitive sense?
Well, if you're adding more things into a category, you're making that category more nuanced,
Yeah,
right?
it can be more nuanced, but isn't that easier to communicate than saying say adding a new pronoun for trans man or trans woman?
Well, I would say that's actually not the reason why we don't add a new pronoun for trans men and trans women.
because trans people map onto the common experience, or binary trans people map onto the cultural experience of man and woman.
Yes. Like I would
Yeah,
say that the real reason why we don't do that is because trans women are women in the same sense that cis women are. So it's
yeah,
just accurate.
yeah,
As far as I conceive of the world.
yeah. I think I agree with that. I think that's true.
But you do have
So,
these people who I really do think are just not in the like they are other genders. Like gender has this infinite potentiality and fluidity to it.
so I think the problem is kind of linguistic. When you say not in the binary, what I hear is not within our cultural conception of gender.
Well, have you heard the term bigenderism?
No.
That is basically it's a concept that says that the binary is one of the features that is built into this broader system that this thinker calls bigenderism that is like the culturally dominant like ideational structure of gender that this particular thinker thinks should actually be undermined and complicated by queerness.
Well, I would just say that they're trying to destroy the English language. Like, I don't think that
But
makes
it's
any
not just
sense to do.
language; it connects to institutions of law. Like it's all explained in the paper. Like it's language is never just language.
Well, it's can you explain that a little bit?
Well, for example, like a lot of the popular theories of like the philosophy of language hold that words are signs that refer to other things. So like
Of course,
there's
yeah.
actually a difference. There's a distinction and a gap between the word we use for a thing and the thing itself. Um,
Hmm.
so basically, words would not exist if not for the realities that they're stand-ins for in order to communicate things. So when
Okay.
we're never just talking about language when we talk about these things. We're also talking about what the language is used to refer to and describe, like, and how language is used.
So, isn't this almost sounds like an argument against neopronouns? Because
Why?
because it sounds like you are trying to say, well, we should make words to map specifically onto each individual experience. And now you're saying, well, we should make well, there is a gap between words and what we say, and what we mean by them.
Well, yeah, in the sense that the word is a different entity than the thing that it describes. Like that's just a delineation. But I'm not saying like every single individual experience you need to invent a word for. I'm saying for people who need new words to refer to them because they just like the words that exist as references to people as functions in the sentences don't work for them.
Well, I mean, I guess I would just say that I like you'd have to demonstrate that that even exists because I can't conceptualize that it being outside of our gender conception.
Is anybody in the chat in that category? There are like the chat has been kind of active because I don't know. I feel like I need to actually refer to someone who's in that position.
Let's open it up, I guess. The chat's been active, you say. I've not been looking at it.
Okay, you are. Okay, can you answer Liam's question? Because he's trying to conceive of gender outside the binary.
No, outside of our gender conception culturally. You keep saying outside of the binary when that's
I
not what
think
I
we're
mean.
talking about the same thing though.
Yeah, I think we kind of are, but it's specific. So the question is, how can there exist gender that is outside of our cultural conception of it? as a sliding scale from man to woman. Well, I don't see how you can just create a new culture. Like you don't just do that. It just happens.
I think this person is into existentialism, if I'm not mistaken, and would probably say something akin to what I might say in this case, which is that aren't we always creating and recreating culture all the time? Isn't it an
I
active
guess so, yeah.
process instead of like a thing that we must just adjust ourselves to?
Yeah, culture is an active process. Um I guess what I'm just struggling to understand is like how to fit something that is so core to our culture, which is the man to woman spectrum. How do you fit something completely outside of that? Like, how do we conceptualize that, and how do we convey it? I would just say that it doesn't. Um, I don't know if I guess I would just say that it probably doesn't exist from the perspective of a Western person.
Well, I mean, maybe they're wrong. Like this eye of society that you're kind of speaking for. Maybe it's just like maybe that to me is little more than a simple judgment of saying, "Oh, you don't count as existing because you don't
Well,
fit
no,
into these boxes."
the experience the experience can exist. Um, the experience can exist within the conception, but that doesn't mean it's outside of the conception. Or sorry, wait. Let me think about that sentence again. So the experience can exist in the same way that we all experience every single color, but the conception of it as outside of our color wheel can't exist. Like if your color wheel is your list of experiences, then the new gender conception would be a completely different color. If our color wheel, which is the sliding scale from man to woman that we experience, then non-binary is just outside of our understanding of color. That doesn't mean the color doesn't really exist.
So it seems like what you're saying is that every single gendered experience possibly, or actually, it seems like what you're actually kind of saying is it must fit within some kind of space wherein man and woman are.
From our perspective, yeah. From our cultural perspective, then yes. But maybe, a higher being than us with more complex cones inside of their eyes could see those as completely different colors. But are in the same way that a different culture could identify that as something different than existing on that sliding scale. But we just can't see it from our cultural perspective.
I just think you don't have to live that way. Like, you don't have to see it that way. And the person
Okay.
in chat is answering your question, then, like, how would you make it exist outside the experience? I mean, you could just make new words to describe the experience. Like, they're already doing it. Like,
I I don't think that you can just create a new cultural conception in that way.
but it's already happening.
Well, no, not for me. I don't see it. Like, not. I don't see those people saying those things. It's that I can't conceive of it because they're talking about something that's outside of a framework that I exist in, or that I see in.
Maybe you should expand your point of view.
I don't even under. So, what if I said, well, expand your point of view, just see a new color? Like, it doesn't make it. It's
I
incoherent
think
to you.
that is disanalogous. Because, like,
How is it? How is it disanalogous?
Because to me, if you're saying it's not a color wheel, I would say that man is one color or like section of shades on the wheel, and then woman is another singular section on the wheel. So you have two there. But then you have all of these other things outside of that
Can you see what I'm
that are
trying to say?
also gender.
So we also have the color line, where one color is on this side and one color is on this side, and there's all this stuff in between.
Yeah, I'm saying that's not what gender is.
I'm not using it specifically to like categorize how many genders there are. I'm using it to say that there is a framework that we can see, and there are things that exist outside of it that we can't conceptualize. In the same way that with Western gender, we have a framework that we can see, man to woman, and there are things that exist outside of it that we can't conceptualize because they just don't make any coherent sense to us.
I think you can conceptualize them. I think it's like I was describing. Like I just don't share that view of reality.
Okay, I completely
I
disagree
don't
then.
think that's how gender works.
Okay, well,
Partly because people already are doing it, and I believe them. Like, who am I to say that you're wrong about your something so intimate as your gender
well,
identity? Like,
no, it's not about saying that you're wrong about it. It's about whether or not you can conceive of it.
but they are conceiving of something. Would you just say that these people somewhere fit in a spectrum between man and women, even though they deny that? Like they would literally tell you that's not where I am, that's not who I am. Like, what would you say to that?
Um, well, I probably wouldn't say anything to them because, like you said, I don't want to hurt any feelings, I guess. But I would just say, I would probably bite that bullet and just say if you were raised in a Western culture, then I don't know that you can really experience gender outside of how we conceive of it if you were brought up that way.
But culture is not this monolith that subsumes everyone. There's plenty of things that you could say the culture thinks that you do not agree with.
Um, can you give me an example? Well, wait. It's not about agreeing with it. It's about being able to conceptualize it. If you can point me to one thing that we as a culture conceptualize that I can't, then I guess you win the debate.
I guess that's not what I was saying translated into your understanding. Like I mean more like basically there are multiple conceptions of reality. Just because you live in one culture doesn't mean that you're going to take on a conception of reality that is entirely aligned with that culture as a monolith. I don't think that culture just kind of like controls people like puppets like that. Like we have more freedom.
Um, I think all of your experiences are going to be informed by the culture that you grew up with, at the very least.
And in some sense, in a lot of cases, it's going to be in opposition to it, especially with people who are like left wing. You can like that. That is kind of how a lot of people have described like the rebel, like the figure of the culturally rebellious. Is they are defined by their relationship in opposition to their cultural conceptions that are kind of indoctrinated and then unlearned in them.
Um, I'm not sure how to respond to that. I'm sorry, but culture is nurtured. It's definitely nurtured, Chidi. Um, Culture is experiential.
And if you go
That's just how it
down
is.
from this kind of big scale, there it just gets more and more complicated as you go to a smaller scale. Like there's so many different cultures within what we would call Western culture.
And so you say that we should have words for each gender that exists inside of that?
If that's what those people want, I'm
You
here to serve the
no,
people.
you can't just do that though. You can't just create a
Why?
word. Uh,
If it works and functions, I'm gonna call you the pronoun you use, even if it's a new word. Like,
but 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 how can you ask me to sincerely use a word that I cannot conceive of the subject of?
well, then you get to know the person. Like, can you conceive of being a woman?
Yeah, because I have a cultural understanding of the sliding scale from man to woman. Well, I don't know what it's like to experience that, but I can conceive of it because I have a cultural understanding shared with women. Like
So
I
you
know what
can't you
women
can't
look like.
wait, so you can't even like you can't you can't even conceive of the idea of being a third gender category that is like not man nor woman, completely outside of that.
No.
Why?
I mean, can you try to explain it to me?
Well, partly
Like I
because
hear.
like man and woman also have multiple meanings. Like it's not like there's one I like there's this one figure of like this is what this looks like you argue that is a cultural ideal. It's not a objective metaphysical ideal.
So can you describe to me a third gender? Can you help me conceive of that? You're saying why can't I? If
Well,
you
in a lot
can,
of ways it would
and
be defined by what it isn't,
um,
which is one way
it.
that we do discern how things are defined. Like not a man nor a woman.
But this still just sounds. Well, couldn't not a man or not a woman still exist on the sliding scale between the two?
Well, no, because that would be both, really. That would be described as either both man and woman or in between man and woman. That's an and not a not.
Well, someone in between man and woman is not a man or a woman.
Unless they're gender fluid in the sense that they're both.
Well, I think gender fluidity would map more onto expression than it would be to experience.
That's not true though. Like I can tell you from my personal experience, when I was like repressing my genuine identity as a woman, I thought of myself as gender fluid because my feelings would shift around about it. My experience of my body would shift around a lot. Like literally like there are definitely people who are both.
Um, I Okay, I guess I would have to learn more about that, but I am not. I'm having trouble seeing that.
I guess I don't personally. I don't see why it's that hard.
And I'm still asking you to try and describe it to me, and you haven't. You've just said it's not a man or a
Which
woman,
one? Like,
which
oh, the third category.
yeah,
Describe along what lines? Like, what are you talking about?
um, like tell me what a Zer would be, or just any third category that you can think of.
Well, I don't know. Like, tell me what a he/him would be. Like, what do you mean?
Well, I mean, I can point to different cultural things. We can kind of build this image of a man, and like diagnose it,
Well, yeah,
quote
there's an
unquote.
image of a man. There's the face of white man, which delineates people's identities in this kind of like strict yes or no way. Like that is the cultural mechanism. That's the abstract machine you're talking about. It's the face. It's faciality.
Well,
There is a
okay.
concept for this, and it's a thing that we should oppose, in my opinion.
So I can say, so this isn't my opinion of what I think a man should be. I'm saying our cultural conception. I can point to these different things like men wear shirts and pants, men have short hair, men have they don't wear jewelry, their voices are deeper, they're usually taller, they're strong, they have like dicks, I guess, that kind of stuff. Like that is a cultural conception of what a man is.
You notice how
Can you
none of
just
these apply to all men at the same time.
Yeah,
So
it's
that's
kind of like
no none of
how.
those things are what makes a man a man.
Well, no, it is
No,
because
it
our
isn't.
culture.
Because every single
So
man does not fulfill all of them.
so
Unless you
okay.
say that only the people who do are men, and then it's like Haas and Jackson Hinkle. That's like the only people who are left.
So when you diagnose, like think like when you diagnose a disease or an illness, you don't have to check every single one of the boxes to find out what it is. To diagnose a mental illness or a mental state, you only need to build like a couple of different things that make up this experience that I guess science or our institutions say are that mental
Well, you
illness.
need to fulfill a
So,
certain criterion, and if you don't fulfill all of them, they give you an undefined disorder diagnosis.
well, no, if
No,
you can still
that's
get.
literally true. Like, if you only fulfill like two of the criterion for bipolar, you get an undefined mood disorder.
Well, if it's two of the criteria, well, two out of how many?
I believe for that specific one, there's five.
Well, so then, yeah, that would be undefined. But maybe if you reached three of them or four of them, and they can each be different ones, would you say that if you reach four out of five of the diagnostic criteria for bipolar, that you are not bipolar?
I mean, I would say that in the sense that you're diagnosed, you are, and if you want to call that the experience that you have, then sure. But objectively, nobody is bipolar.
Well, that's because a diagnosis can't be objective because we can't see or point to human experience, which is why we have to do these things like diagnose and create common categories. Like man is just a category that we culturally add to.
I think man is more. I think it makes sense to think of genders more as identities first and foremost than the categories that we box.
Well, it's not about making a box. It's about finding a common cultural experience and putting people into it.
But that's not
You're
really
not.
how it was built in the first place.
Well, I think the goal should be not to make a box of what a man is, but to find a common experience of man and then build a circle around it so that we can kind of have a common understanding of what that means. That's kind of how language has worked. Whereas we can't do that with neopronoun people.
You can though. There are enough of them. I assume you could literally say like, okay, there's some kind of similar traits here. But if you use that as
Okay, so
the
then you would.
if you use that as the mechanism for creating categories, then of course you're going to exclude these people because you're just basing it off of norms that have already developed. Like you're doing it post hoc.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the point, right? To do things post hoc so that we
No,
can build it,
that's not
so that we
that's
can.
not a critical analysis of society though.
Well, it's how we do language. We need to build common understanding of common understandings of things so that we can communicate them. That is necessarily a post hoc thing. You have the experience and then you have the word for it. I agree, Chitty. There's no bedrock to language.
I don't think it's that limited. I'm trying to find this specific Wittgenstein passage about family resemblances that applies to what you were saying about the categories of genders. Because basically, I'm just trying to find something. Give me a second here.
This so I'm not seeking a bedrock to experience. I am seeking a common linguistic understanding that we can use and understand together. That's not bedrock. That's fitting language to our needs.
Well, I mean, if you want to give voice to people's experiences in a way that makes sense to them, let them make new words, right?
Well, if it's not mapping onto a common cultural understanding, then I don't see what the I can't conceptualize the word.
Well, for my purposes, the word is a referent to someone who's outside the binary.
Um, someone you said.
Yeah, like it's directly connected to the people who use them.
Um, but it's just not how we conceive of gender, though. It's not useful to
That's
anyone.
how I conceive of gender.
But you are not culture.
Well, I think the individual has more truth in this respect than the culture does.
Well, okay.
Honestly.
Then I think you're just wrong about language. You can't just
But
start
it's not
using any.
just language that I'm talking about. Like, gender is not just a thing that exists in language only.
But you're trying to add to language in order to create new categories for experiences that nobody understands.
The people who experience them understand them.
But that doesn't mean anything
It does,
for
though.
language.
It
No, it
does. It
doesn't.
does, though, because they are
No, it
human
doesn't.
beings who exist who use our language. So it does mean something.
Oh, okay. Well, can I just say I'm an experience, or I'm a human being who has an experience, and like this cup is a chair? Like that means nothing to anybody.
I don't think that's analogous.
How is that analogous? How is that not analogous?
Because it's not something as important to people as the way that they conceive of themselves.
What does importance have to do with creating a word?
Well, because then why else would you use words if it wasn't important? What?
Do you think the little specks of dust that float around me are particularly important to me?
I think they're less important than the words you're using. What do you mean?
Okay, well, I just said speck of dust, and I referred to something that isn't important to me.
But you wouldn't have, but you wouldn't even have been able to communicate that if the words weren't there.
Yeah.
So, what's your point?
My point is that importance doesn't map on to whether or not we should have a word for something.
I think it's important because I'm trans.
I don't understand that argument.
Like, the same person could make an argument that, oh, you're just destroying the English language trying to make me call you a woman.
Well, no, because in that instance, I would argue against that by saying we are trying to add to a category that we have some sort of understanding of. We're just adding to a category. We're not making a whole bunch of new words.
Well, creating a new category is not that drastic a change from adding to an existing one, to me. It's not that
I guess
important.
okay. I think we've been running around in circles for a little bit. I think the core importance is I just have to have it demonstrated to me that this is an experience that people will have. I just don't see it. I would have to be able to conceptualize an experience outside of the man and woman sliding scale.
I wish I would be able to explain that by my own personal
Yeah.
experience, but I can't.
But you were just like, oh, how can you not understand that? How can you not
Well, because
conceptualize that?
it makes sense to me that it exists. Like, I have no trouble believing that it exists.
Um, Without being able to conceptualize it in any manner.
Without being able to experience it myself, I can conceive of a different gender category. If they come up with a word for it, I'll use it, and it will, I assume, gain more meaning over time as it grows in use.
Well, how can you conceive of it if it doesn't exist in our cultural understanding? Can
It
you
does exist. I don't think of the world in this kind of like bimodal way, this very
then
modular way.
then help me conceive of a third gender? You haven't done it yet.
Well, I'm kind of trying to explain how I can't do that very effectively because I don't fit into that box.
But I just described to you how I can conceive of a woman even though I'm not one.
But only by your
Like,
own idea of one. You can't, like, you see what I'm saying? How come the
no.
idea of a third gender doesn't make sense to you?
It I mean, okay. So I can say to clear things up, I guess maybe I can say that I can conceptualize of it and that I can say the words like third gender and that kind of means something, but as far as what a third gender actually is, like what the object that we'd be pointing to is, it doesn't make any sense. It's incoherent.
Why is that incoherent?
it we that's just not how we conceive of gender.
Well, are you capable of understanding the fact that not everybody's a Westerner? Like, not your cultural understandings are not like you don't have to stay in that understanding of the world. You
Um,
can have a different one than the one you have now.
I think if I were to, from my Western perspective, if I were to see a culture or a society with three genders, then I think that would necessarily have to fit somewhere on my sliding scale or on my cultural learned sliding scale from man to woman.
Why aren't you willing to
I'm
adopt a
willing. I've
new
been waiting.
conception?
I've been waiting. I'm willing to, and I've been waiting, and it's not been presented to me. It's not been demonstrated, in the
You
words of
haven't demonstrated. Well, why? Like, you see the people. I'm mutuals with a lot of them on Twitter. Like, you see them, they exist. That's enough for me. And I've met someone in real life who uses neopronouns, and they look like what you would think like an assigned female at birth non-binary person would look like. It's like they're very short and petite. They have short red hair. They use they, and I think it's the Zer one.
Okay, well, that is functionally, if you have one experience with someone, then that's functionally no different than a nickname to me.
Why? It's not a nickname though. It's a pronoun.
But can you explain to me the functional difference then?
Well, because what do you mean? Well, then what the fuck is the functional difference between a regular nickname and a regular pronoun? You're saying that wouldn't exist either.
No, the functional difference between a regular nickname and a regular pronoun would be the nickname would be to differentiate one person and point specifically to their understanding of themselves. And then a pronoun is a tool that we use to point to a common cultural understanding of what something looks like.
Because they're
Like
not the
saying,
only person who uses the pronoun. There are other people who do. They just don't go here. I just lost him. That was a good point too. Fuck.
sorry, my thing just crashed.
Damn. Did you hear what I
I
said?
I did. You said, um, how is it functionally different than a nickname, correct?
No, I said because they're not the only person who uses those pronouns. There are other people who exist who use them.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it
So I
refers
was
to
gonna
those
ask.
people. Like they exist.
So I was gonna ask. You said there were conceptually infinite neopronouns. What happens if an individual creates a neopronoun? What does that mean functionally more than a nickname?
Well, because they would start using it, and then I assume it would be shared online in today's day and age, and then maybe other people would start using it. And it seems like what you're saying again is that, oh, we don't have a broad cultural idea of a third gender, therefore the pronoun doesn't have any use value, which I would just
Well,
say is
no,
wrong
but
because it
but
exists,
in
even if the culture says it doesn't. To me, like whatever.
no, but in that instance though, we would be using a word or a set of vocal tones or phonemes or whatever to refer to an individual experience, which is what we try to do with names.
But it's not their name. They have a name. That's not that.
We're looping.
It's
We've
true.
been here
Like
before.
it's true.
But I'm saying its function would serve the same as a name. As a name.
It doesn't though.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Because if you want to call them their name, you would call them their name, and
I'm
that's a
talking
whole
about the.
different thing.
I'm no. I'm talking about the function of the word.
Well, I already agree with you that names and pronouns both have functions of referring to people.
Hmm.
I
But what
just
is a
don't
name?
think that a pronoun is any more simple. Like why?
What is a name? What is a name? Or what is the difference between a name and a pronoun? We're going back to this.
Because your name carries so much more meaning than the pronouns you use on like legal documents, etc. Like your name is your name.
So your name is trying to or categorize your experience and what people should use to refer to you as, specifically relating to how you experience yourself, correct?
Well, your name does way more than that.
It
Like your
just,
name functions as a sign for you as an individual person.
yeah. And so if you have one individual person who is using a neopronoun, then what is the difference between that and a name? If it's a sign for an individual person,
Because it's not their name. Like, who
you're
cares
not
if it
answering
doesn't
my
have a functional
question.
difference? Who gives a fuck?
Well, I mean,
Like,
okay, I guess so.
the
It's just we
similarity you're
disagree on
pointing
what
out,
language should be for
the
then.
similarity you're pointing out doesn't matter to me that much. Because it's still a different word. Like,
Well, okay, I mean, sure, if I mean, I guess like if your argument is that neopronouns are just little nicknames and they don't point to any experience, then I mean, sure.
that's not my argument at all, though. Like, where did I say that at all?
I mean, it sounds like that's kind of what you're getting at with this whole like, oh, if one person has an experience and they want to be called a neopronoun, then sure, go for
It
it.
points to their experience.
Like a name, yeah.
You just said that I was arguing that it doesn't do that when that is my argument, though.
No, I'm saying that the function of the neopronoun points to their experience.
Yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't.
Okay. I think
That was really
yeah,
weird.
I'm not sure. Yeah, that was strange. I'll have to watch that one back. I broke or something. I think we just have some fundamental disagreements on like what gender means, what language should be for, etc. Like, I think they're kind of imbreachable. Or if they are breachable, I think we'd have to take some time away to convince one another. Because I
I don't
gotta
think that you're gonna
kind
convince me to go back to like. I think I'm just kind of on my own page here.
well, sure. I mean, I guess I would say I would have to take some time away, digest what you've said, think about it, and come back with more arguments. And then I guess you'll still just disagree with me.
Well, does it make any sense to you?
Does what?
Like my arguments here.
Um. Well, I guess you haven't really presented an argument for um. Well, it's kind of hard for anything pointing to a third gender to make sense to me because that's not something I can conceptualize. So you didn't give me an argument for that. You didn't demonstrate that they exist in any capacity, or that there exists any category outside of our. Sorry, you didn't. You didn't express to me that I can perceive of a category that is outside of male or man woman. So that's kind of like hard to grasp that concept specifically. I don't think we made really any ground on language. It seems like we have disagreements about why we should have language. I don't think I necessarily conveyed my side there. And I didn't hear really anything from you saying why, other than just because they want it, which isn't enough for me. Yeah, that's kind of what I got.
Okay, I
It's
don't really
yeah,
understand that.
it's hard. It's like it is a hard topic. Like the discussion of f- like language and philosophy and why we have it and what is gender, all that stuff is like hard to grasp. It's especially hard for like lay people like us to discuss.
What does that mean? I spend all my
What do you?
time thinking about philosophy and shit. Like, I would not describe myself as
Well,
a layperson. I would describe myself as a student.
well, sure. I mean, yeah, maybe you have a better understanding of it than me. I'm like open to to that idea because I'm not like super versed on any of it. I
Which
guess I
one?
just have both gender and language are not really my field. I guess I'm expressing what I see language should be for, and I'm expressing what my conception of gender is. And that's kind of as far as I can go with it.
I didn't know that your conception was so like I don't know. I feel like if we had this conversation a year ago, it would be even more interesting because I was really thinking about the issue of gender a lot at that time. And that was like one of the things that I just thought was so wrong. Like that conception that like, well, a man is just someone who has all of these characteristics because it's like, but when you look at everyone who is a man, it's a group that defies all of them. You see what I mean? Like, and only fulfills some of them on an
Uh,
individual basis. So like that, none of those things are what makes someone a man.
I don't think we can create categories based on what they're not. I don't think we can do that.
But every category is at least partially defined by that.
No, I think we build categories by inductively.
And either way,
By
this category to me, like, it's just not real. Like that conception of it is just some kind of a cope.
I don't think we've ever built any categories um, deductively.
But who the
We only
fuck
build
is
them
we though?
like culturally.
But that's not even how it formed culturally. Like you're wiping across all of the history of the terms and what they refer to,
No, I think
and the
when
ways that things have changed and evolved throughout history. Like it's not some kind of
well, sure, that would just be adding to the categories that we made because we saw a common pattern of experience. So we saw a common pattern of experience. At first, we thought it was, well, one category has a dick, one category has a vagina. We expanded our understanding, learned about gender identity, separated it from sex, and now we're seeing this. We have this different conception of gender identity where we have the sliding scale thing,
well, why were
which is,
I think it's way more complicated than that.
I
Like
think
in
that's
every
a,
single way.
I think that's an okay summary. I don't know. Can you walk me through it from your perspective?
Well, part of it is like, why were they combined in the first place?
I guess because we saw a cultural need for it, and we saw people because we had this. Sorry, because we had these two categories that we saw of man and woman. I guess we just saw people that thought or that experienced the other category, and I guess that's kind of where it came from.
I think it's literally like all the way back. You go to primitive society. It's because of cruelty, and what cruelty is,
Really?
it's not violence. It's not like some kind of unfathomable evil or anything like that. Cruelty is the movement of culture on bodies. So when you create a machine of cruelty, a social machine, which just means like a organization and arrangement of things that processes flows, um, you get culture gets to define what the body is, and you can like primitive society they literally inscribe people with symbology, and what I'm saying is that when you are born, they inscribe you with a symbology. That's the assigned gender at birth. And you can actually erase those inscriptions and re-inscribe yourself with a new like reclaimed system. And even just on the micro level of just a few people or like two people, and then literally have a reinterpretation of the body, because it's not like we're
I
saying
mean,
like,
that's a
oh, I'm just a woman in the cultural sense. No, I have a female body for myself. Like it's
well. I
literally
mean,
like I wouldn't even say that the separation between sex and gender is something you should get too stuck on or should think is that important.
I don't
Because
really believe
sex
so either.
itself is just another one of those, like it's kind of like the same thing really. Like
I mean, I agree that sex and that sex is also culturally constructed in some kind of way. With your machine of cruelty, I don't know that those people could inscribe something that was. I mean, they're still making an inscription that's still within their conception of the way they see the world. You know.
Okay,
Okay.
that's still how it happens.
Well, I guess I'm just not seeing it.
I mean, it's basically the idea that like bodies aren't inherently defined. They are like it's a actually existing process that you actually have to do. Like it's actually like
Right, but we create categories
you're
for
not
those.
born anyway.
Sure, but we create cultural categories and we
Well, you are
we try to stay
creating,
a
you are
common.
recreating and retaining and maintaining a cultural category.
I'm expressing to you what the cultural conception is.
But you're not just saying that descriptively. You're actually like maintaining it as you say this.
I'm saying that I don't really think it's possible to conceive outside of that if you exist within it.
But nevertheless, your utterance is a reinstitution of that power structure.
I don't give myself that much credit, but okay.
It's literally true.
Well, okay. I don't really see us going much further with this. I think we have, like I said, I think we have some pretty fundamental disagreements.
This is what happens when you read a lot of postmodern thinkers. You get a lot of ideas like this.
Okay, you're just I'm gonna hold my tongue on that one.
Somebody in chat says, I don't think it's impossible to conceive of something outside of our culture.
um, you're not conceiving of something outside of our culture. You're conceiving of something that um, well, okay. I think things that are outside of our culture are still informed by a cultural context behind them. Um, so unless you have direct experience with it, yeah, it probably is not possible to conceive of some things outside of your culture unless you have experience with it. And maybe that's why I'm struggling so hard to see the third gender thing.
I think you should
I just
meet someone who's in that position and learn from them.
sure. I mean, maybe I should. I think I would be waiting on. I think in order. Yeah. I'm gonna I'm gonna hold my tongue again. I mean, I see the people on Twitter. I guess that's all I say.
Well, I guess my question is like, what would you say if somebody asked you to refer to them using a neopronoun? It's kind of like a Jordan
Um,
Peterson interview question, but like, I'm curious.
I'd probably just use their name.
What? You wouldn't use the pronoun?
I mean, I wouldn't use a pronoun. I would just say the name.
So why would you deny using a trans person's pronoun? Like, that's what you're saying.
I'm not denying using a trans person's
You
pronoun. I'm
are,
just
though. You're not using it.
well, I'm ignoring the issue altogether.
That means you're not using it.
Well, I mean, I'm not using it, but I'm not using something contrary to it. I'm not saying, "Oh, you're a man, you're a woman." I'm just saying I don't understand that experience. I'm just going to call you by your name.
But if somebody did that to me, I would not interact with them anymore.
Well, I mean, I guess they don't have to interact with me.
Well, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's an equivalence there of experience.
I
Like,
I
it's
do see what you're saying. I see where you're coming from. I guess it's just kind of an absurd hypothetical to me because I don't know about or I can't conceive of that experience. So,
I don't think it's that hard to imagine.
well, okay. Well, you just remember you're talking to someone without a mind's eye. So, Be mindful. Neopronouns are ableism.
What?
No, no.
That was a weird take.
That was just a meme
I
about
find it
not being
so
able to conceive
annoying
of it.
though, like the people on Twitter who just go on like, calling someone it is dehumanizing. It's like, no, not if that's what they need. Like,
So, what if someone's
it doesn't
pronouns
have the
were?
objective meaning of dehumanization. Like, subjects exist, subjectivity is real. You are actually dehumanizing that person by not using their pronoun. That's my position. It's this. It's like you're looping your position into a cringe.
Why do we have to create individual new categories for every different thing and not just fit things
That's not what it
into?
is. It's creating new language for expression of non-binary gender identity. It's not that. It's not that
Isn't that a
individual.
new category though?
But it's a category that exists.
No, it's not. We don't have a conception of a third gender
I
outside of
definitely
male.
do recognize its existence. I say the
But you,
we, as in all of the individuals that actually are real human beings. Yeah, it is. It does exist. It is real.
but I still haven't had that demonstrated.
Are you saying what? What do you mean? What
I'm
does
not
it
saying
take to
they.
demonstrate it?
I'm not saying that they don't exist or that their experience of themselves isn't real. I'm saying that the category doesn't exist for me to conceive of.
Why do the categories matter that much?
I don't think they do, which is why we don't need to create a whole bunch of different genders, and we just need to like create categories. We need to build on our own understanding of it that we already have.
No, but why is a category's wide acceptance of existence a criterion for the way that you treat people?
It's not about treating people a
But that is
different
the
way.
effect
Like,
that it has. You admitted this.
so okay, if someone were to come up to you and they were clearly black, like they had a dark skin complexion, and they asked you to call you a white person, what would you say to them?
I would ask them why. I would learn more about that because that in particular, like, I don't know. I if if somebody did that to me, I wouldn't believe them at first, honestly.
Okay, so would you call them white?
I mean, if they told me like I am actually like if that, then yeah, I would.
Would you be able to sincerely believe that?
Yeah, I don't think that people's physical characteristics necessarily denote identity traits. That's literally what essentialism is.
And then I guess I would just say that you're lying.
How am I lying if I believe
I
something
just don't.
true?
Well, I just don't think that you could look at an individual with a skin complexion and everything that matches a black person within your cultural context and say that you believe them to be white. I don't think that you can do that.
Why?
I don't know if I have to justify that. Like you just can't.
Well, what if I mean in the hypothetical as it's playing out in my mind, I literally can. Like I could. I literally can. It definitely is a possibility.
Well, maybe we're just built different.
I
I think
don't
that's what it.
understand that at all, honestly.
Yeah, I don't either. I'm completely floored that you that you actually bit that bullet.
Why is that big of a deal?
Well, I
Do you
I
think
don't
that people are
know.
like objectively categories? Like,
No, I think that we build categories to describe experiences. And if you say that a
oh my
person with
god,
a
but what
dark
does that mean though? If not, like, that's functionally that's how you treat it. Is as if it's like this objective reality when it isn't.
so if any type of person I if any type of person if a person with that type of skin complexion and that type of look about them can fit into the category of whiteness, then I don't know what whiteness means anymore. That entire concept becomes completely incoherent.
Well, whiteness isn't even like as a concept, it's not even built on appearances primarily. It's built on like a certain set of values and culture. It's not based on like people's actual physical whiteness.
But are they white?
What does that mean? Is an albino black person, an albino African person, is that a white person?
Well, no, because there are other. I'm talking about the aggregate of traits. I'm not just talking about their skin color.
But that's not
But
how. I don't think that that's actually how categories work.
it is.
It's not though. Only if you believe it to be true is that true.
It seems like in a lot of the conversations that we have, I feel like you just like deny reality on some level in every single one
Yeah,
of them.
I
And it
mean
doesn't make
there's a certain conception of reality that I do oppose for sure.
yeah. So
I have a
I just
very
can't.
fluid way of looking at reality.
Sure. Well, I guess since you've already said like we're not gonna convince each other, I don't think we're gaining anything from this at this point.
Well, hold on a second here. What would you say? Hold on a second. Because you used that racial example. What about somebody who looks like a man to you at first glance, but they tell you that they're a woman?
Um, sure. I would say that if they were mapping their experience onto a conception of like gender express, like I don't think that the category woman is just what you look like.
I don't think
Like
any identity category is just what you look like.
I mean, what about like your hair is brown?
That's not an identity category. Like, there's not an identity of brunettes that is like
That is an identity. Brunette is an identity.
not in the sense of
It's
race or sexual orientation or able status. It's not in the sense of those at all. Like, those are not the same
why do we have
things.
to only have those conceptions though? Why can those be the only things that are categories?
Well,
They build
when
into
you're
larger
well, hold
categories.
on though. When you're like filling out a form for something or like all these societal things, your hair color is not like the same as
My drive
and when it
my
comes to,
driver's
hold on a
license
second though. When it
my
comes to
driver's license says that
society,
I have brown
like
hair.
the material makeup of society, like when we talk about what racism means, like what it actually is, like the disparities that exist and all of that, it's not actually about fucking individuals' attitudes about skin colors. It's like these. The reason why those identity categories matter more is because they affect people more. Like they're more real. Like there's not discrimination based on hair color.
You don't think that people have cultural ideas of what different hair colors mean?
Yeah, but
What
they're
about
more
like
associated with
what about like blonde
ethnicity, which
girls
is
are
a more
dumb?
important category.
So what about like blonde girls are dumb? Is that not a
That's literally just a
identity?
stereotype about appearances. Nobody just
Yeah,
identifies as
it's a
blonde.
yes, they do. Blonde
Not in the same
people,
way as they identify as black, for
blonde
example.
people are
It's
blonde.
just not the same.
Okay.
That's literally just a singular trait. It's not like a big molar category of identity.
Well, it is a category of identity, and I don't think the importance takes away from that category.
I think that kind of whitewashes a lot of shit, to be honest. Like, but
I would
okay.
love to see how, I guess, but
So you think that people are only their identity categories because they look that way?
no, I did not say that. There are,
So you think the categories exist because people look certain ways? That's what you
I
think.
think categories can only exist insofar as there's someone to experience them.
Then why is it so unfathomable for you that it would happen where the experience exists before the category exists?
Um,
And then
the
you have to create
experience
the category.
the experience does exist before the category exists.
Then why is it so impossible for you to imagine somebody experiencing a gender that isn't man or woman? Is my question.
Because I just haven't seen it yet, I guess.
But if that weren't real, we wouldn't even be talking about it. And you just said that you don't deny the experience is real, so why do you have a problem with a category forming for it?
well, we're not just talking about a category though. We're talking about a continuous addition of, there's like bunny gender and stuff and like, all those different things. Like
Okay.
we're expanding what gender means to the point of absurdity because it.
Gender is expanding because gender is
So,
unstable.
can I ask you, what does a category that contains infinite things mean?
Do you not understand the fact that all categories could potentially contain a multiplicity of possible things?
No, I would deny that.
Why?
Uh, because they just don't. Because if a category contains infinite things, literally infinite things, then the category is meaningless.
They all possibly could, though.
No, they can't. Then we can't communicate with one another.
We still do that, though. So yeah,
No, we don't.
you can have both of those things.
No, you can't. I don't see this going places. You just can't. A category that contains infinite things is meaningless.
Well, that's because the meaning doesn't exist in the categories themselves. That's literally why that is. Like,
Can you so if if we have the category of cup and every single thing fits into the category of cup, what is a cup?
but a cup is not a subject. So why would that even be the case? What?
No, I'm asking a simple question. If we have the category of cup and every single thing it fits into that category,
That is
everything,
stupid. Honestly,
infinite.
that is stupid to me.
What do you mean?
Like,
Can
why is
you
that relevant? It's an object. Like, that's not the same thing as a woman or gender.
can you answer the question?
There aren't people who are going around calling everything cups. Like, you're not talking about a reality.
But can you answer there are people though that are saying that gender can be infinite and whatever you want it to be.
Because it's true. Well, it can be whatever it is. I don't know if I would use the word want.
Can you I still would like my cup analogy answered, but
Say that again.
if there is the category cup and infinite things exist within that category, what is a cup?
A cup is a cup. Then, if that were true. If anything is a cup, then anything is a cup.
That is absurd.
It's
That's
literally just
crazy to me.
circular. Like your
No.
question leads to a circular answer. If everything is a cup,
Language
it's
just doesn't work like that.
but
Because
reality doesn't work like that. That's
then the
why your
word
question
cup
is
doesn't mean
absurd.
anything. Why would you ever say cup if it described every single thing? You would never use that
It
category. It would be
doesn't.
meaningless.
But at the same
Yeah,
time, there's not an ideal form where a cup is. It's literally just like we call this object this, and then there are other people who don't even call them cups. And there's certain cups that we don't call cups, like mugs and bottles. You can still call it a cup because you drink out of it in that sense. But why the
well,
fuck
no,
are we
but
talking
cup
about objects now?
because I'm trying to draw an analogy where if you have a category which has infinite things inside of it, then the category is meaningless. If you say cup is a cup and it contains everything, then you would never call anything else a cup because it wouldn't mean anything. The category ceases to exist.
But I didn't say that all categories necessarily contain everything.
I mean, you said that gender could contain everything.
No, I said that it is expanding
I mean, okay,
because it has more potential than you think it does.
well, maybe you're right. Well, hey, we've been going at it for about an
A
hour and a
long
half,
one,
so
yeah.
so I definitely have to get my little sisters to school in the morning.
Yeah, I
Um,
have to do a bunch of work still tonight.
right. So, it was a good discussion. I don't know that we made much headway, but it was fun.
Okay.
I think maybe in the future we'd have to revisit this one, and I'll have to really digest some of the things you say and like how to break them down.
Okay.
But and I'm still working on that music for those videos.
Awesome.
So when do you want it by?
Well, I don't have my iPad right now, and I was gonna use that to compile the like footage. So it can take as long as you need. Still, like it's fine.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. I'll keep working on it.
All right, cool.
I might scrap that second one though. I'm not really feeling it.
Which
With
one?
these new head the second one, the one that you said was more tribal or whatever,
Oh yeah.
I might scrap that. It's just whenever I get new headphones or new any type of gear, I want to make something completely new and I don't want to work on stuff that I've already worked on because it just, so that's just how it is. But anyway, yeah, thanks for the conversation and hearing me out and everything.
Yeah. No problem.
It was fun. Are we still friends?
Yeah. I just think you're kind of
Okay.
cringe in some ways.
Okay, well, I think you're kind of cringe too, but that's okay. Well, all right, I'll see you later.
All right, bye.
Later. It was fun.
Holy shit. Talk about category brain. The chat was active as hell at one point. I'm sorry. I feel like I did like a bad job looking through it at the time. I was like more focused on trying to respond to argument. I wish I found that Wittgenstein thing because it really like proves that like things don't fit into general terms because they share a bunch of traits. Is basically the argument. They share the trait that is the general term is kind of the point. But I wish I fucking found the specific wording. Cause like that's just not the only like none of what he said is the only way that you have to think about reality. But he just takes it all for granted. And you just like I don't like that response, like I just don't see it. It's like it's there. Like why does that not fit into your perception of the world? Like it just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how someone's thinking could be so narrow. Like I don't know. It's just that's just very weird to me. Someone in chat was saying that he should look at racial categories in other countries because apparently in Latin America you're not considered black unless you're like fully like dark like African black. And then some Latin Americans will come to America and they're called black and they're not. Like but I guess what his response to that would be is like, "Oh, but I live in this society and the royal we have this category." Like it's just too limiting. Like you don't have to see the world that way. I thought what I said about Haas was funny because, like, there are very few men who fit his description of what a man is. Like, there's not a lot of them left. Like, it's a dying breed. There's not a lot of real men left out there, folks. Yeah, like, why? I just don't understand. Why is it not good enough that people feel dysphoric about both genders? And then they invent their own terms? Like, just use their own fucking terms. Clearly, there's an authentic experience there, or else they wouldn't be doing that. Like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? Reality contradicts your ideas. It literally does. Like, the boxes that he was trying to fit everyone into, the reality of people's experience in the world completely defies all of that. Like, it's just not true if you want to build a conception of reality that includes everybody. It's just not helpful to that end. And I don't understand how he couldn't. Like, he found it so, like, as if he did not have the ability to reinforce a power structure by saying words. Because, of course, you can, dude. Like, that's what everyone is doing all the time. Like, my point that I was trying to make there was that just by making that judgment of saying, this is the way that it is, you're actually making a demand. You're actually saying, the world must fit my ideas. And newsflash, they don't. They literally don't. It doesn't. The world does not fit his ideas, folks. Do I use or support neopronouns? Well, what do you mean by support? I don't use them for myself. But yeah, I just had a 2-hour debate about that issue on the pro side. Is there an issue? Some people, yeah, they think that it's not useful to communication because culturally we only conceive of gender in the binary. Basically, is the argument that he made. Make heads or tails of that if you can. Like, I don't. I think that is a really reductive take, but. Just finished reading it. It could be that I'm tired, but his writing just does not click. I was reading Quine earlier. Hi, Bree. The debate is over. We didn't really get much of anywhere. It was one of those things where you have two people who just have two totally different conceptions of reality. And they just kind of, like, bash heads for 2 hours. And it doesn't really, like... There's not really a dialectic that develops the thinking. It's just kind of contradiction, contradiction, contradiction. It's okay, Bree. You don't have to be so apologetic. Like, it's you are fine. I'm glad it was interesting. I don't know how you can just not conceptualize someone non-binary as like a thing. Yeah. I don't know how he denied that is what he was saying too. Like I was saying at the beginning, like, gender is not some kind of two-poled spectrum. It's like the color wheel that I was saying at the beginning. But then he was saying, like, he was defining non-binary people outside the color wheel. As in, defining them outside of existence, kind of, is basically what he was saying. Or, like, xenogender people, I should say, is more accurate to his position. It's really stupid to me. Isn't there also something in the categories themselves that is contradictory? Like when we say, act like a man, if it was so binary, then a man wouldn't have to act like a man, there would just be one. Well, yeah. I mean, what does it mean to, quote-unquote, act like a man in the first place? It's already somebody demanding something of you that they are describing and attributing to the gender of man. Like, it's like, deconstruct the statement. You see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't just mean what it means on its face. And that is how language functions too. It doesn't just mean what it means on its face. Thanks, Bree. Thank you so much. I love these new glasses too. Even though I've had them for like 3 months. But when you say something like, a man is someone who fits all these characteristics, you're building an imaginary man. That's all you're doing. Like, you're just describing a person in your head, dude. Like, because every actually existing man isn't a man because they have any of those given characteristics, and they all have, none of them have, like, not all of them have all of the characteristics, unless you just define all of the people who don't have all of them out of masculinity completely, which no one does. Like, he said so many requirements. He said so many requirements that it's like there's barely any left if you just say that everyone who fits all of them, or everyone who doesn't fit all of them is not a man, then like 75% of all men are not men anymore. Like, what do you mean? Like, that's not even how it functions culturally in the culture we have, dude. Like, but when I said that, it didn't make sense to him. He just kind of bulldozed beyond what I was saying. It was really weird. Yeah, it's also misogynistic to say, like, be a man, man up, like that kind of thing. But I don't think he was arguing for that. I don't think that he supports that. He just built an idea of man that is actually very like exactly what a traditional person would say. You see what I'm saying? Like, and he completely built that in his mind. So I was saying, like, the only people who fit that are Chads, like Haas. Like, is everyone, like, are you not a man then? Like, I don't know. Doesn't make sense. I just have that pouch thing on my door back there is just like, it's just to hold a bunch of shit, basically. It's like a shelf that isn't a shelf. It has cat ears in it. It has some fake eyelashes that I got from a girl in it. It has perfume in it. It has toothbrushes in it. It has a fake gun in it. And spoons that I use to stir my coffee in the morning. Yeah. I mean, I thought that debate was going to be better, honestly. My expectations were, like, disappointed. I thought he had better arguments. But it was just a case of, like, you're just making demands of reality. Like, you're just. And reinforcing already existing cultural norms. Like, that's what it boils down to. And it doesn't cohere to me his opposition to using the neopronoun. It doesn't make sense to me personally. It just doesn't add up. Like, it's not a good argument. Because he was going back and forth. Like, he would say things that imply that he denies the experience, and then he says, "Oh, I don't deny that the experience exists." It's kind of sus. Like, it's kind of sus. Sussy amogus poggers. Don't suppose you've ever played Super Monkey Ball? I have no idea what that is. I'm sorry. I have no clue. I like streaming again. If I'm gonna stream, I want to do more debating because it's content. It's content for sure.